Okay, welcome back to In Search of a Way. Last time I talked a little bit about theology and the theological implications of quantum physics. Hopefully, you found some of that interesting. Some of that might have been new for some of you, some of that might have been new information. Today, I'm going to talk about something that I imagine many of you have encountered some awareness of, that you've bumped up against this topic somewhere in your life hitherto, and that is religion and evolution, the theory of evolution. What does it have to do with theology? And I'm going to try to make the case for you today that the answer to that question is nothing at all. I'm going to try to convince you that evolution and religion is a boring topic. I want to try to convince you I should not have to give this lecture because the questions should not, the questions are unusual questions that need not really be asked. But here we are. It's 2021, and for my entire life, people have been asking about evolution and religion. I'm not even going to try to make today's lecture interesting. That's how boring I find this topic. I do, however, have great passion about convincing others that this is a boring topic, right? So, as boring as I think this lecture is, I think it's important for you to realize how boring it is. Okay, theory of evolution. For those of you who don't know, the theory of evolution is a theory from the 19th, first started getting developed in the 19th century. Charles Darwin is a famous name associated with it. 1859 is when he published his first book about it. Evolution is the name given by biologists to how life develops as a result of two phenomena happening in tandem. What are the two phenomena that happen in tandem that cause evolution to happen? Random mutation of genes plus natural selection. Okay. How do these two things work in tandem? Random mutation and natural selection? Well, okay, so you've got your genes, right? All the stuff that's, in your DNA and all that stuff you've learned about. Crick and Watson and double helixes and all that. Okay, you've got your genetics. And, genetics just naturally change. Your genes naturally mutate with each generation. There's random mutations in the genes. Sometimes some of those mutations make you stronger, faster, smarter. And if that happens, that means there's a greater chance that you'll survive longer. And that means there's a greater chance that you'll have offspring who will have those mutations. And thus, your genes get passed on. And as this happens over time, as enough genetic mutations accumulate, different species of life come to be on the planet. Different plants and animals, eventually people. So that's the theory of evolution, okay? If you want a very simplistic version, right? Just imagine the first animal with eyes. That was a random mutation. It's obviously a lot more of a complicated story than that. But the first animal that could see, a predator hunting it, right? That animal could see predators coming, could run away, and was more likely to survive and have offspring. So that's evolution. Why am I talking about the theory of evolution in a theology class? The answer to that question is because some religious people object to the theory of evolution. Mostly in the United States, you don't really see much objection to evolution on religious grounds in other countries. Mostly from Protestant Christians. You don't see it as much from Catholics. Um, Among Protestant Christians, amongst some groups of them anyway, there tends to be a higher amount of what's called biblical literalism. The belief that the Bible should be read as a straightforward, literal book whose genre would be the same genre that you would expect to find a history book written today. So, one thing you should do is, I mean, you can go online or if you have a Bible at home, read the first two chapters of Genesis. Now, if you're a biblical literalist and you read the first two chapters of Genesis, you're going to believe that um, what this text is intending to do is to describe a week, the very first week in the history of the universe, where God made the universe and over the course of the week populated the universe, first with things like stars and the moon. Then on later, then he made the plants. Then it says God made fish. Then God made land animals. Eventually, God makes people. He puts the people in a garden, a wonderful, beautiful garden. Actually, let me back up. First, God creates an adult male named Adam, but Adam's lonely. So God takes a rib from Adam's side and makes him a rib man. It's a little pun in Hebrew. It translates woman, right? But it says woman came from the rib of Adam because in Hebrew it looks like the word looks like it would mean rib man. It says God made woman by taking a rib from Adam's side. That's where woman comes from because he didn't want people to be lonely. He wanted people to enjoy each other and to have sex with each other and things like that. So he put them in a nice garden with all kinds of nice food to eat. But the one thing God said was, he said, one rule. I have one rule in the middle of the garden. Never eat the forbidden tree. There's a big, bad forbidden tree you don't eat from. Well, one day the woman, her name was Eve, is walking and a snake comes up to her and the snake says, "Hey, Eve, are you allowed to eat anything in this garden that you want? It all looks so delicious." And Eve says, "Yeah, I can eat any of this except the forbidden tree in the middle." And the snake says, forbidden fruit. That looks like the tastiest of all the trees. Surely God wouldn't forbid the tastiest of trees. You must have misheard the Lord your God. And so Eve eats the fruit of the forbidden tree, and she even gives some to her husband. And then God comes in and God says, "Why would you do this? Now you can't live in this beautiful garden anymore. Now I have to let you go live in the world, and life's going to be so much harder for you." Okay, and that's the first three chapters of Genesis. Does that sound like a history textbook to you? Or does it sound like a fairy tale? I think it sounds like a fairy tale. So I want to propose to you that there is no conflict between the theory of evolution, which would say not that woman comes about from being built out of one of the first man's ribs, but rather that the human species, like every species, evolved from some prior species. Right? That the evolutionary story is not compatible with a literalist reading of Genesis. So biblical literalists have a problem with the theory of evolution. But there's no reason to say that Genesis has to be read that way. It seems to me, I've said it, and I'm not trying to put down anyone's beliefs here. Maybe you're a biblical literalist. But I want to suggest that the first three chapters of Genesis, that's not their literary genre. So it's important to realize when you talk about the Bible, there really is no book called the Bible. That book doesn't exist. The thing you have, the collection of pages between two covers, it's really a library. It's an ancient library. And like any library, it has many genres in it. It has poetry, it has law books, it has history books, it has biographies, and yes, it has fairy tales. Now, when I say it's a fairy tale, I don't mean it's dismissible. I don't mean it's unimportant or stupid or childish. That's not what I'm trying to say. Fairy tales can be very important. We all enjoy a good fairy tale. Grimm's fairy tales, by the way, they're the original fairy tales from the 19th century. I mean, they were gruesome. They were not something you would have wanted read to you at bedtime. No, no. Okay? Fairy tales are a literary genre that can be very helpful and that can be used for learning important lessons about life and the world. The Catholic Church has never really endorsed a literalist approach to the Bible. And all the way back in the 4th century, you have St. Augustine saying that the book of Genesis is not meant to be read as a history book or as a science book. The book of Genesis, said Augustine, was there to tell us important truths about God. What are those truths, by the way? I mean, why read the first 3 chapters of Genesis? Well, one, to realize our total dependence on God, who's our creator. That's something you can learn by reading those chapters. It gives us a chance to reflect on the nature of sin, on our own shortcomings, our own selfishness, our own tendency to mistreat each other, to alienate one another. I think the first 3 chapters of Genesis offer a wonderful reflection on the need to protect our planet, to take care of nature, to be good environmentalists, to develop greener ways of living. I think you can find a lot to meditate on in the first 3 chapters of Genesis there. Again, even though I'm calling it a fairy tale, it's still very spiritually an important text. It's just not a historical text. It's not purporting to tell you about history the way, say, a history of the American Civil War would. So I said that I think this should be a boring lecture today, and I hope that it was. What else do you want to know about evolution and the Bible? Some people say that the Earth is only 6,000 years old. Again, I don't think that the Bible warrants that kind of a claim. The Catholic Church teaches, every pope in my lifetime has openly subscribed to the theory of evolution. It's very acceptable for Catholics. The official teaching of the Catholic Church is that the one thing you're supposed to believe from those first chapters of Genesis is that the soul of human beings is created by God. Well, if you're a matter informist about the nature of the soul, that's not a problem. Everything's created by God anyway. So to say that the soul is directly created by God, I'm not really sure how that's supposed to be complicating the picture. So if you may have heard people say that they don't believe in the theory of evolution. You may have seen people say that you can't be a Christian and believe in the theory of evolution, especially if you've grown up in this country. You may have seen that kind of thing on the news. So what are your questions about evolution and the Bible, or about religion and evolution? Go ahead and put them down in the comment box. I'll take a look and I'll answer as many questions as you put there. Hope you're doing well. Bye.